You can kick us
All
off, Ron.
right. Yes. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in our
All over the
virtual
world.
world, all over the world. Welcome to Dallas Immersive Design and Development Community. Today, we are talking about our sixth annual AR and AR and VR year in review. We do this every year. I'm here together with Preston McCauley. Preston, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, how's everyone out there doing? I'm Preston McCauley, Director of Innovation at Tonic 3. And also, in addition to that, I teach user experience design and do a lot of speaking on all kinds of topics in the extended reality space, if you will. So,
All right, in a few seconds, we'll start our presentation. Well, how are you doing, Preston?
I'm good. Just, been working a lot on looking at some of the new stuff coming out with MetaQuest 3. So I'll talk a little
Yes.
bit about that today, but I've been trying to put up some of my own experiments and build a few things on. The SDK is kind of messy out there, so um, that's been a pain point. Is Oculus doesn't do a good job with their SDKs.
Yeah.
So,
Uh, uh, yes, I've been playing with a lot of the Quest 3 myself. Their new games. Actually, there's a lot of web XR stuff that's coming out on it, and
yeah,
so I invite you guys if you would. I will have a presentation about mixed reality in JavaScript at I guess in my time at 4 p.m. today. We're in Dallas, and so feel free to watch me later on speak at that session. But today we'll focus on the AR VR year in review. Take it away, Preston.
well, I will in just a second, but I wanted to comment on what you said because I'm working on
Yes.
something too specifically to connect the WebXR technology
Oh yeah.
for VR. So I was building something out using A-frame and a few different things to try and create a kind of a racing simulator. We'll see how well that works.
Yes.
But
Oh,
certainly,
that
yeah,
sounds fun.
definitely attend Ron's session because you'll get a lot of information out of it. And I'm a big, I always loved working with A-frame and another number of technologies because they really help us to push the needle forward. So, all right, shall we get started?
Yes. Sure.
We'll have a lot more time for
Uh,
talking, I think, today
yes.
than we normally do. This is a much shorter session than what some of the stuff, but I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. This is, as Ron mentioned, this is one of those items that a long time ago I set up because I was like, hey, we need to have a tradition that we do every year, and it's exhausting, but it also keeps us close to the pulse of both how AR and VR is evolving throughout the time. So I'm really excited that we have the opportunity to be able to talk to different people here and share kind of where the space is and what's going on. And we sometimes the space is going to take a little slow down, obviously, and sometimes it's going to be building itself back up. So. Just a little bit of information about myself. I've been doing this stuff for, I don't know, 25 years, looking at all kinds of technology across the spectrum. As Ron and I are the co-founders of the Dallas AR/VR group, which, of course, is our community here in Dallas that we're very happy to work with and talk with a lot of different people that are really smart and intelligent. I also teach UX, and then in addition, I've been developing for many years my own multidimensional approaches for using UX within AR and VR. Created my own practical UX methodology that I teach, as well as a practical AI methodology right on that heel. So, and then I do a lot of development. I proudly identify as a unicorn in this space. I don't mind that moniker at all. I like understanding development and design and all of the pieces in between because it really helps to build out really cool and interesting solutions. So, I kind of keep this framework inside of the year in review kind of the same across the board. So for me, it's really trying to have a process that we can look back at each year and go, okay, we have a barometer to measure things. So all of these quotes, I think, still hold true. There's not much more, that has been kind of said, but everybody does believe that, as the technology is going to get smaller, the capabilities are going to go up, and more people are going to want to use this on a day in and day out basis. Of course, we're all on the cusp of seeing Apple's widely announced headset now that a lot of us in the industry have been watching and waiting for this announcement and keep popping it up on our slides all the time. And so, I think Tim Cook here has said it's a significant portion of the population will have AR experiences every day. And we're going to see how Apple kind of makes that foray into that. And I'm going to talk about a few other areas, other companies too, that are making those types of advancements and changes. So couple notes on kind of what we'll cover. And I try to keep this short, informative, and this has been data that I've been keeping up with for, longer than 6 years. So I try and stay on top of the data and then fill in the gaps so that you have kind of the latest and greatest information as much as possible out there. I've even used a number of AI techniques to even help me make a few more informed decisions around where these technologies are going to evolve. So we're going to talk, moving on beyond the introduction, we're going to talk a little bit about market size, region growth, and then growth industries. Excuse me, we're going to move on to a little bit of kind of the hardware breakdown, a tiny bit, talk a little bit about enablement technologies for this, for the augmented virtual reality systems. And then we're going to talk a little bit about path predictions and kind of predictions and beyond. And then we're going to kind of bring Ron back in, and we're going to have some discussions around these various topics at the end here. So I look forward to giving you all this information. Let's get to the numbers. All right. So this is a chart I've been maintaining myself for a long time and looking at different industry sources as well. And, it's always interesting to me because it's not just based upon the market size of AR, VR. It's not just based upon total expenditures on software solutions, but also on developing new hardware that's going to align with it. So when you think about these numbers, it's not just total sales specifically related to software, but also hardware and innovation development along the way. So, looking across that, we're looking at around 21.3, maybe 22 billion in total expenditures. If we look at where we are in 2023, moving to a conservative 25 billion. I've actually pulled this down quite a bit from where some of the original estimates are because we have a lot of historical data now, so we can see where those growth numbers actually make a little bit more sense and kind of align better with reality, I would say, because a lot of these predictions early on, people are like, yeah, it's between 25 billion and 150 billion. Well, that's a very large range. So I'd like to aim a little bit more conservative so people can kind of think a little bit more about what makes sense for the here and now. Now, region-wise, we're still seeing a lot of pretty much the same growth areas. If we take a look here, North America has a huge growth, specifically in AR and VR. I'm also seeing, and I work a lot with LATAM areas as well, a lot more requests coming out specifically for VR and AR type solutions in some of these middle regions, certainly Latin America, South America, and getting a lot more requests, even though their devices will have a lot less capability, but we're still seeing those types of requests coming out from those regions. There's still a lot of interesting kind of high mid growth, I think, that's happening from what I've learned across Australia. It's an interesting market space, but there's a ton of VR companies in Australia that are constantly looking to evolve and build out. So, when we talk about the global footprint here, this industry definitely has that global reach, and we're starting to see a little bit more lift in some of the areas that were not so high before. So take a look at that some more later. When we think about the industries, I kind of balance this based upon where we're seeing the most use cases evolve, but also which ones are actually products are hitting market and ones that actually make sense. Certainly, entertainment and gaming is a large sector, of course, with MetaQuest 3. And then on the heels of the Apple Vision Pro, and then we've got the Vive Elite and a couple other different devices on there. Now, with a lot of transition with some of these new AAA games like Assassin's Creed coming into the mix and such, entertainment's definitely taking a long, is definitely one of those big spenders in the industry. And we're seeing a lot of that with some really innovative gameplay and such. And really exciting to see that. The health and medical sector has also embraced a lot of VR solutions and augmented solutions for understanding different diseases, different approaches to how we might support trauma in patients and various medical conditions as well. I've been doing a lot of research specifically too within the health and medical sector around brain and neurophysiology. So definitely a lot of growth in there. Training education is clearly a strong point that's always kind of held its middle ground inside of this and can even cross these boundaries. When we think about training and education, it goes across the vector. It goes across the whole vertical. Everything from could be applied to retail. It could be applied to post-secondary education or any really type of industry. And we've certainly seen that with a number of applications and a number of specific platforms. And that is another indicator too of the growth of just the industry overall. Is we're starting to see a lot more platform-based solutions now, which will start to solidify the capabilities of these devices because they're all kind of lining up to be about the same now. We're starting to get into some of these resolution-based wars and GPU-based wars on these devices themselves. So one thing that's great is we're starting to see a lot of standardization around these capabilities, and so platforms will start to build up around that. I'll talk a little bit more about that here in a moment, but the retail area, transportation, they're kind of still in that kind of neck and neck space. Real estate and construction has had a lot of lift, of course, pre-COVID or COVID state. There wasn't as much lift. During COVID, a lot of these companies started to build out solutions so people could get into these homes and look at them and understand it more. And VR was a natural transition to that. Now that we've transitioned back to a little bit more in-person visiting, that's kind of cut down a little bit. It's not died down by any sense of the mean. It's still a very, very vibrant industry, especially since it's much easier now with some of the iPhone devices and the LiDAR capable technology that we have now to be able to produce a lot of these complex spatial maps. And I love the fact that we're seeing, I want to talk about this later on with Ron around spatial maps and kind of where we're seeing this growth and how we're seeing them change and what that means for applications. But I'm really excited about that from all of these industries and using that spatial data, because specifically for AR, it's really going to help people connect better to the experiences that they're trying to build. So this ties nicely into this. This is the chart I came up with a while ago, and I really wanted to have people understand kind of what the different spectrum is of these devices and what they really mean to the experience, because it's great that the technology is evolving. It's unique, it's cool, it's exciting, but it's also important to understand how does that impact the user experience and how does it make people want to use these devices on a day-to-day basis. Of course, that's important for our industry, and that's important for growth of virtual reality and augmented reality solutions. So overall, you really have to think about, sorry about that. You have to think about how these different devices are going to interact with the world around you. And so, we started off with using mobile devices and being able to access some type of immersion, but we had a high level of audience reach. Well, now we're starting to see devices that are more on the norm, and I'll talk about this later on, of kind of the head-mounted AR devices and the ability to change between both augmented and virtual states and somewhere in between. And that certainly is going to give us a lot more immersion, a lot more presence, and a lot more capability to interact with both the virtual objects that we might create or the virtual instances, as well as the the real world objects and physics as well. So I'm really excited that we're making that transition. The technology is getting cheaper, the sensors are getting a lot cheaper, and the chipsets, which I'll talk about here in a moment, are helping to drive a lot of those capabilities. So where should we be creating today? This is kind of very formulaic. I've been running the numbers and doing a couple things and running a couple different numbers that I've had against some different AI predictions to kind of come up with this number. And feels like, if you think about what devices across the ecosystem are AR capable, it's probably around 2.5 billion, plus 100 million or so. It's an approximation of that. But that's important to know because most people have these devices, whether they be a phone that can do augmented reality or a headset mounted device like a HoloLens 1, Magic Leap 2, or even looking at devices like more complex for business use cases like a Varho or even a Pimax. So, we look at these different devices. The VR segment is certainly becoming something that's going to be a lot more. We're not going to see just VR devices. We're going to see multimodal, multimedia devices as this continues to go forward. And our phones will still act as a gateway into many of these. In fact, much more than you may think as we start to add on some more technology that people want to have in their hands. This is a chart that I've been compiling year over year and then trying to keep on top of. And it's tough because it's always hard to get these numbers, but I have to do a lot of estimation and try and run the numbers overall. PSVR in the PSVR 2, I think actually I missed that number on here, but it was supposed to be around, I think 500,000 units were sold on PSVR 2, if I remember correctly. PSVR had a huge sale on its initial systems. And so that's still a very, very large number. But if we look, MetaQuest 3 approximations coming up, with the good sales, the pre-sales, and everything like that, still it's going to be a lot of market devices that are coming into play here. And excuse me, that's actually a typo on there. That was on me. That's actually a MetaQuest 2 on there. MetaQuest 3, we don't have the sales quite yet on some of those. Valve, still around 1 million units, and Oculus Rift still hanging in there. Some of those older devices, Pico 3, Pico 4, never really got a chance to sell much in the United States yet. It still had its stalled market. The production run stopped. So we don't actually have a really good number for US. We do know that there were some sold internationally, I believe, but it didn't really get much into the US markets. Pimax has a large following of loyal people now, and they've actually done some really good things that I think are important for this industry, is the ability to upgrade your devices, which most manufacturers have not been able to do yet, is to have a return policy that lets you upgrade to the next generation. I think that Apple entering the ring is probably going to start to do that as well, and that may open up the doorway to a lot more consumers and businesses as well. So a lot of these numbers will start to transform and change over time, but they feel pretty good to give us kind of an idea of what's in there. When we think about AR head-mounted devices overall, Vuzix has done a good job. They actually have a lot more lighter weight classes with less AR capability. It depends on the device you're talking about. The Vuzix Blade's a lot more capable, but a lot of these are typically in logistics jobs. You'll see a lot of these devices because it's on-demand information, pretty simple UI, not much to build upon there. But of course, as the AR glasses and the technology get a little bit cheaper, we're going to see those get a lot more sophisticated. HoloLens 2, of course, just kind of sitting in there with its sales and real. A lot of sales overseas, specifically more so in the European and Asia markets, and certainly in Korea as well. We saw a lot of sales of those devices, and they're just kind of opening up now to the US. So that's fairly new to see some of those sales. However, it's exciting because there is definitely a market for these devices. What's interesting to me personally is they started to market these devices more as personal display devices for, having large screen TVs and stuff. And still out on the market to see if that type of strategy really worked, kind of along with Vive Flow. Vive Flow is one of those focused on more health and building out health and wellness, kind of using VR as a subset of that, or as a marketing approach with that. They did sell around 200,000 units or so. And so the jury's still out if that technique is really working. HoloLens One is still, has a whole bunch of those devices out there. And then, of course, Magic Leap Wand just several months back was announced that it's deprecated, and the SDK will no longer be updated. Still one of those great devices that I really enjoyed using, a lot of the early hand gesture capabilities. That was really a lot of fun. Of course, we've grown with the capabilities in the Meta device and such now. But Magic Leap 2 has, this is just a prediction, probably less than 30,000 sales, but they have a lot of really cool technology that's going into it. And I'm really excited to see how those evolve as well. So let's turn towards the future a little bit, all right? Oh, sorry, my slide decided to change itself. There's no mystery here. Everybody is chasing this goal, this dream of trying to get to an interoperable, fast, easy to use device that can handle all of the capabilities of today's more sophisticated devices in a lighter form factor that we don't think about. And we just put it on and we're able to interact, certainly with Meta coming out with their Ray-Ban enabled devices and more devices tying into AI and using these capabilities. Certainly is an exciting time as we start to see extended reality cross into artificial reality as well, and artificial intelligence merging into these systems. So this is kind of that everyone's after this. We see this in sci-fi movies. We see this in all of the different areas. People really want to have solutions that are as lightweight as a pair of glasses, but as powerful as a home computer. Once we have all that, a lot of people are going to be figuring out, like, what can we do with this? What are the powers? What are the capabilities? And there's a road to get there, right? There's obviously put together this little chart here to take a look at some of the core chipsets that we tend to look at when we're talking about AR and VR. Now, mind you, there are other chip manufacturers out in there, but I tend to focus on the XR1, XR2 because those were powering a lot of the highly capable devices like the Meta Quest and the Meta Quest 2 devices, and of course, even the Pro device. And then a lot of other manufacturers picked those up as well. So I actually had some liberty because I have the specs between the two of XR2 and the XR2 Snapdragon by Qualcomm and the Apple M2 device specs. And I used some AI magic to make a couple determinations and kind of revise this a little bit more to think about how we might approach the predicted XR3 device and where that might land. So, looking at the cores, looking at a different Adreno chipset on the core side, definitely going to have some memory gigabyte increase. But these specs have not been released yet. I'm just making a prediction based upon what we see here. 6 stuff, of course, is going to happen, but we're getting closer, I think, to finding ways to use AI and some of the multiple camera capabilities on board to potentially start to look at other types of body mechanics and translation of things. So we may start to have more devices that can use, understand different, how the body moves in different ways, to understand how that can translate into different types of physical interactions in virtual environments, and of course in our augmented environments as well. The display race, I mentioned this before, it's happening. We're already on it. We've seen this with TVs. We've seen this with all kinds of different types of mobile phone technology. It's how many pixels can we push per eye, but more importantly is how much latency can we reduce as well, because latency, as you know, can have a big contributing factor to nausea when you're using these types of devices. Even if you're trying to use pass-through cameras, you can have a lot of nausea. So we got to get those cameras positioned up. Certainly in the latest Meta device, the pass-through has gotten a lot better, and I'm really excited about that. Even in the Pro, the pass-through was a lot better as well. When we get that camera density up, or excuse me, that camera capability up, we're going to really open up the possibilities to get that latency out of there and help. Apple M2 device is actually trying to do this. They've actually put on board another chipset in addition to the M2, which I believe it's the M2 chip that's going to be in there, which is R1 reality chip, which handles transferring some of that data computation off of the M2 to the R1 to hopefully help and reduce latency. Some of the early results of that has been kind of up in the air, but having a chip that's certainly dedicated to understanding spatial placement, spatial positioning, and taking those calculations and then passing it off to the big processor chip definitely makes sense to be able to free up some of those pipelines for pushing higher level graphics and higher level fidelity. So we're going to see that probably a lot more with some of these chipsets too, as they start to probably have bifurcated functions instead of an all-in-one integrated chipset like Snapdragon kind of has right now. Video decoding, certainly video is a huge part of that because we need to understand the world around us, and power efficiency. We're always chasing the power efficiency. Right now, a lot of the devices are leaning in more towards the GPU side, and the power is going to be the suffering component of it. I don't have any states yet on what the M2's power efficiency is. We have, said it could run for a couple extended hours, and the M2 is definitely a performance chip, but we don't have the results yet on that because it's not out there in the full wild yet. These charts here, just a kind of a quick example of some things that I was looking at and trying to think of what would be interesting to show you all is, I always say follow the chipsets, and the chipsets are usually about 2 years ahead of where the technology is going to take us from a feature wise. So, cameras will continue to evolve, but the chipsets have to be able to support multiple cameras, which of course is going to enable pass-through capabilities. So when you look here, certainly the Apple Vision Pro is really pushing the boundaries on a lot of these different devices. And the Meta Quest 2 is definitely pushing those devices in a huge way as well, with some of the processing power, which is important because a lot of people just do not want to use these connected or tethered to a computer. So the market certainly changed and shifted in that way a lot. What's interesting is this other chart here is just kind of showing where some of those predicted values are and some of the capabilities specifically related to tracking and where these devices are going to really excel, or where we believe they're going to excel. I think that some of them are going to really excel in the tracking capabilities, and that's really where you're understanding both where the person is in the environment, how they're interacting with the environment, and then what their anticipated contextual use case is going to be in the environment. That's really going to be kind of that next launching point, if you will. So, and that ties me into this. This is just a similar chart that I had, when take a look at these areas that are really what I call enablers. It's important that the devices exist, and then the SDKs have to be easy for developers to use. Certainly more abstraction layers. We've seen this now. I made a prediction about this, and it's come true. Certainly on the Meta Quest side is, HoloLens was a good indicator of having this spatial data and being able to interact with it. And then of course on the Apple side and the Android side, getting spatial anchors, being able to build those spatial anchors, and then being able to understand where we are in both the physical and the virtual world at the same time, and then readily call that up, can really drastically change how an experience unfolds. So these abstraction layers really help between understanding how we move from a digital experience to get the spatial data and then move back into the experience. And then Meta has done a good job on this from a user experience standpoint. I've been really pleased with, if it doesn't have that spatial data, their new updated spatial mapping capabilities of also mapping furniture and stuff. I understand why that's important, because once you understand that a room and a position and position of objects, you can do a whole lot of possibilities that you couldn't do before, not just in gaming, but also in the application space. So I'm really excited about that. And then classifiers have come a long way as well. What that basically means is the ability to recognize things. Niantic Lightship has a really good kit for classifying objects such as skies and grass. And you don't have to write all the underlying code to be able to basically say, hey, I want to be able to replace the sky with, an orange, a bunch of oranges or something like that crazy, for writing a snap filter or writing a lens filter. But instead, you can actually just query that directly and say sky replacement. And we're seeing that as well in the MetaQuest and that device. And even I already know that's in the SDK for the Vision Pro, where you can access that spatial data, the spatial anchors. And that's been there for a long time. So it's nothing new, but it's important. What's really exciting is certainly is some of the AIs with ChatGPT and Claude, and I deal a lot with these different AI technologies as well, is adding the ability for these classifiers to exist as their own LLM or AI capability, even on top of these, could really open up the doorway to a whole new understanding. Because today, our AI in these devices and these chipsets is really just looking at, is it a plane? What's the distance? Does it match up with a table? But if you can enable an AI to look at the space and analyze and actually understand, oh, there's an apple on that table, that person must be eating dinner. I know that's a scary concept for a lot of people. For me, it's always been really exciting to enable those things and look more towards the positive aspects as opposed to the dystopian ones. But with that type of capability from a vision standpoint, it'll really enable a lot of powerful new applications in contextual awareness and anticipatory AI designs and things like that. So I'm really excited about that, which of course opens up a whole new slew of possibilities and APIs and AI models above and beyond that. So I like to show off some of the past predictions. I've highlighted the ones in orange here that kind of come to pass, have happened, and I blocked the ones that were not bolded out. So you can kind of see a little bit here. I'm not going to go through all of them. I'll just jump ahead. But yeah, I like to keep the past ones to kind of see what transformation has been happening. We're starting to see a lot of VR content platforms exist now. Certainly in the education space, there's a lot of them. I know, Engage VR is one that's still out there that I think is really great. In 2019, 2021, I think it's interesting because I made a prediction that we see a lot of mom and pop mixed reality arcades. Of course, none of us knew really what was going on, what was about to happen with COVID, and how that would shut down LBS, location-based systems like the Void and other things. So we're still making a slow kind of return to some of those. In 2022, we weren't seeing a lot of that stuff, and we were seeing more at-home based solutions, of course. Now, if we jump ahead to taking a look at kind of 2023 predictions overall, some of the things Quest came out, we didn't really know what its namespace was going to be at the time. And then, of course, I mentioned one of the things that I thought we would happen is a mesh spatial system. I mentioned that before several years back, and we have that now. It is a spatial map. It's not super easy to use from what I've seen thus far inside of Unity, and kind of working with the code. It could be a lot easier to take advantage of those spatial systems. Unity certainly did a lot of work in their code to be able to allow this using tools like Mars and stuff, but it's still a little bit tricky. Form factor, we're starting to see start to reduce a little bit. Certainly, that's the pancake lenses and other technology innovations on the lens structures that's going to be important, and the battery size changes are going to be good as well. Hey, I mentioned that we would see Meta release some AR glasses, and they weren't Snap related, and we did. We saw some new glasses just recently come out, actually. I still believe that there's a whole bunch of opportunity in the line of haptic gloves and how haptic technology evolves. I don't think we've seen the evolution that I would have anticipated here yet. I know that we have a lot of these systems that can use your hands now and gesture-based technology for that, but there is still something about having that feedback that the real world can provide you when you're in a virtual experience, or even when you're in an augmented experience. So, I think there's still some devices that haven't been invented yet, above and beyond gloves. I think gloves are unique, and there's certainly some really good ones, and they've certainly come a long way. But I think there's a lot of possibility there. I think overall, we never did get to see a HoloLens 3, unfortunately. There's a lot of ramp down in the technology industry, as everybody's well aware of. And what's important to note here is that even with this, a lot of the people that were kind of down working on the different technological advancements, they still move forward. So there's going to be ups and downs as we move through these different evolutions of our capabilities in our devices, specifically within the AR and VR industry. So kind of wrapping it a little bit, I wanted to take a look forward, not too far forward, maybe just try to keep it practical a little bit. I did mention a while back in 2023, I believe, that there would be some HoloLens Microsoft Meta partnership. I still believe there's something there because I think that they could really produce something pretty cool together. And I think a necessity, it's probably going to have to happen if anybody wants to compete with what Apple's coming up with and how they're evolving their devices. Certainly Meta has done a lot of development to be able to build a really good consumer-based device over the years. Say what you want about the company overall, but I think everybody out there is enjoying the latest device right now and has very few complaints, except for controller tracking. I've already heard that out there. Some of the faster games has some potential controller issues related to the positioning of the lights in relation to the tracking mechanisms. So I think I've experienced that a little bit myself with some Beat Saber lately. WebXR, I mentioned that we're still seeing a slow lift, and that's not anything to do with the technology so much as because it's kind of stabilized with how we call different controllers. In fact, I believe Ron will be talking about some of this later on in one of his talks. But specifically, it's browsers. We're waiting on browsers constantly to update and adapt these things. One of my biggest pet peeves is Android devices and specifically on Chrome devices can support a lot of depth-based camera planar projection, which allows you to determine planes using a number of camera techniques. And so you can put objects on actual planes. That's part of some of the WebXR core standards, and you can slot that into your code. But the problem is that you still can't necessarily utilize that on the iPhone devices because Safari doesn't support a lot of that. So we're still kind of held up there on some of the advancements that we should be making, and Apple's kind of moving slow on their Safari updates, probably for good reasons. But that being said, we can enable a lot more WebXR capabilities with A-Frame now, 3JS, and other technologies, and including Unity. You could build some experiences as well. I'm going to move on a little bit here to the last part, which is going to be kind of looking forward a little bit more. Those are some of the predictions. So I really feel like coming up 2024, 2026, when we start to look at what are those core components that are really going to be important to any type of manufacturer that's building these devices, whether it be a Magic Leap or it be a new Meta device, which we'll probably get one every couple of years. It's going to be important that spatial maps are a common design mechanic. As I mentioned before, I don't think we're going to have a lot more devices that we see that are going to be highly specific to the VR market or to the AR market, but should be accommodating both. The challenge of this is, it will depend a little bit between how the glasses and the capability of glasses evolve. When I say glasses, I mean lighter weight headsets that look a little bit more like traditional glasses. LiDAR, it's pretty much an absolute now. I mean, one of the things is important is we got to understand the world around us to be able to evolve these technologies as well as the experiences on them. I think Vive's going to probably release a new AR headset. They were scheduled to have one in production. I don't know if it's going to hit. It's probably delayed. I know a lot of stuff was delayed because of market downturn. Arrival of XR chipset. I know this is probably in production, but like I mentioned, it's probably a couple of years out. It's probably at least a year out, but typically reference units make it in earlier before the launch of the chipset. And most of the devices right now are still building to the XR2 chipset if they're using the Snapdragon chips, which are actually really good. And we still haven't fully maximized out their capability with some of the hardware that I've seen out in the ecosystem. But we're close, which means we need to have another chipset to evolve to. And maybe that's where Qualcomm and Google might enter in with a modified chipset. There's a lot of rumor around this. And of course, with all of the advancements that and learning that Google has had over time, working with both, early editions of the less loved Google Glass, as well as Google Cardboard and a lot of those entries. I think Google, possibly with Qualcomm, and maybe, who knows, with Samsung, may try to enter the fray again here. Certainly, if they're going to do that, they need to boost their SDKs. They got to get them easier to use for people, and make sure that they are focusing on their own spatial map ecosystem as well as having referential spatial anchors and things like that are so crucial now to be able to enter this space. So we'll see. We might get some really interesting announcements here, maybe near the end of the year, especially depending on how well the Vision does. Quest Pro 4, there might be another Pro revision. I know that from one of the things that was definitely happening in the industry, Meta was definitely wanting to, kind of refresh our headsets and devices every couple of years. So, if that device did indeed appear, I don't think I think they're probably not going to go the Pro route. I think they've probably kind of leaning more towards the consumer route. So it's interesting to see how both this plays out between Apple and the other one. What's interesting to me is also taking a look at adjacent technologies that are important to the evolution of the AR/VR industry, and took a brief sideline look at some of the batteries and the capabilities of the batteries. We obviously need smaller batteries that are more power and energy efficient with less danger and less heat. Solid state batteries, I think, have a potential to start making their way over lithium ion and other types of batteries. I think that's important because we need to be able to power even more sensors and technology. And the GPUs, well, they're becoming more energy efficient, certainly in the cores, whether it be the M2 or M2 Pro or other devices. They're still going to consume. They still have to consume enough energy to be able to run and be reliable. That means that the sensors and the technologies are going to have different types of batteries and capabilities. AI is going to look to enable more complex spatial relationships. I talked briefly about this earlier, where if we start to bring in, and this is where I'm doing a lot of experiments, which I'm happy to talk about later with in our after moments here, but I'm really interested in taking a number of AIs, whether it be Claude or OpenGPT or some of my own custom ones I've been building, and bind it to CV stuff, use OpenCV and give it some more vision capability and see what's possible with that once you understand a room, and thinking about how game experiences or professional experiences could unravel and really produce some things that might be out of this world and very much in our science fiction minds. Cheaper Apple Vision. There's a lot of analysts that really look at that. In order for Apple to take off, they have to really hit the price point. For people, Apple always tries to drive upon its brand as being its biggest thing. So that's why a lot of people are like, I don't know if I'm going to purchase that device. It's really expensive. And it's very much in the price point of where HoloLens was, and even earlier versions of Magic Leap. So if they keep on the heels and everything goes well, hopefully 2025 we'll see an Apple Vision 2, most likely a new chipset. And then I think we're going to start to get some more smart glasses with have a lot better spatial. We have some today. Don't get me wrong. There are certainly some with Nreal using your smart device to be able to power them, and also helps from a transition standpoint. I think WebXR still has to mature to some of those mediums a little bit more. And then I still believe that no one's built this yet that I'm aware of, but I still believe this is a necessity to be able to enable cross-room functions, meaning we don't need to just be in one spatial map, but we need to cross spatial maps. So the ability to understand what's happening more from a cloud-based structure for a business or a technology, and create a dynamic lighter spatial systems that can update on regular intervals, much like beacons operate today off of Wi-Fi signals and such, to be able to understand what has changed in the room and be able to relay that data off to the systems themselves. So that was a lot of information we went over, I know, and that's a ton. But I share all kinds of augmented reality, virtual reality information every day on LinkedIn. I share it across Twitter, X, I guess it's called now, right? And I of course, I even have a TikTok channel now where I share these types of insights as well in the AI world and AR world as well. So, I'm especially excited by all the advancements coming in that AI can bring to this field and help us to kind of push it forward even more. So that's been the year in review. That's a lot of information. I know I dumped on everybody. So I want to thank you all for your time on that. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. I'm very talkative on LinkedIn. I love having these conversations with people. And that leads us into our conversation Ron and I can have.
Yes. Thank you very much. That's a lot of information.
I know. I try to overwhelm people with information. It's just like a ton.
Yeah. Every year I always look at this as like, wow, it's amazing how we find all the different, the stuff that we were thinking about a few years ago, being in fruition, right? Being something that we can use every day. And of course, a lot of things, yes, it's still in the works. Someone is still planning on these and someone is still getting it. But I think, overall, the technology has been evolving. It's amazing to see how all these different, a lot of the different advancements into this. And you mentioned, just to start the conversation, mentioned all these different forward-looking stuff. Going back to your slides, is like, there's a lot of things that we're looking at in terms of 2024 and 2026. Which one do you think that's like, hey, definitely that's going to happen? It's like if you're going to bet on it.
I think we're finally to the point with all the acquisitions that have happened over the last several years, and looking at Google's acquisitions and looking at Niantic's application, all of these acquisitions, that spatial maps are absolute necessity now. Businesses need to start getting on that. They need to start looking at it and understanding, how do we map out our business? How do we actually use our spatial data? And how do we think about applications that can work with that? That I definitely feel we're on that now. We've seen more and more spatial anchors evolve with locations, even with some of the SDKs that have been coming out from Google and such, for, you could position objects at the Eiffel Tower, or you could do that, with WebJS, you can do some of that capability as well. So I definitely feel like that, like, it's kind of like the, it's like the air conditioning in the South in your cars. You need to have that feature now in order to make it to the table, to have those. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. Spatial maps, it's something that is becoming more every day because you have Google Maps and we live with Google Maps,
Yeah.
and it's become essential. Even on like every time I drive, it's like, okay, might as well just set up that Google Maps. I know where I'm going. It always, it's like an assistant to you. It helps you where you are, wherever you're going.
I mean, Google has a great tie-in with that. There's no lie. They've got great maps. Imagine just doing a simple transition from a map, like a more traditional road map, to a spatial map, and how that handoff happens between devices. They're starting to play with it a little bit, certainly with some of their AR experimentations that they were showing and such. I think, everybody's eyes right now have obviously transitioned to looking at AI. And so what do you think, Ron, are some of the things that AI are bringing to the table now that empower kind of the AR and VR industry?
Well, the AR and VR is happening right now because of the advancement of AI industry.
True.
If you think about all the different things that is already incorporated in these technologies, already had that, had a lot of understanding, world understanding, right? Scene understanding, not just on the vision itself, but also sound, also, the haptics is becoming more and more. AI has been part of that. The controllers have some AI. A lot of these cameras working together have some AI processing.
As that technically.
Yeah, yes, we started not to call him AI. You know what I'm saying? Because it becomes a specific part of that, right? It's specific part of the industry. It's like it's critical now that we start to incorporate some of these AI learnings into these devices as we go through, and becomes part of the system. It's becomes seamless, that you don't even have to train or to study. It's part of this. And that's the reason why they have the hand tracking. That's a lot of AI related works that's done there. Eye tracking, a lot of those too. So it's not just hardware and software working together, but also some of the AI improving the algorithms.
What do you think about my conversation? Because this is an interesting one that I was just kind of thinking about a little bit this morning in regards to, we got the glasses coming out, that people are purchasing and stuff, and being able to enable conversational chat AIs and such like that. They've come a long way. I'll tell you right now. Like, I have daily conversations, with my my ChatGPT,
your assistant
and such, in ways that Apple and Siri and Google can't even come close to right now. And so that's obviously going to be a big concern for them. But above that, like I talked a little bit about, like, if we have these spatial capabilities in these AR and VR devices, specifically focused on AR, and we have the right privacy and permission components in place, which I talked about before, the PAL and different things like that. What do you imagine could be possible connecting vision to spatial plus AI on demand?
That is a good question. There's a lot of things I can think of, practical application for it. But if you think about, how we were just talking about maps, right?
Yeah.
Maps requires, and I remember when I first got here in the US, you have to get these paper maps to go everywhere. And then we converted that to digital. And as we moved that along, it added a lot of these other functionalities like routing and all that.
Mhm.
And you think about the intelligence that gets added that allows people to make it easier for them to navigate, to find the route, find the best way, not just just looking at the map, but also real-time data collecting from other devices or other sensors in order to have a more accurate and real-time map, right?
Yeah.
Real-time information. The way I see it is that we use these AI, all these large language models into making it more intelligent, not just the intelligence itself, but more using this large language model in terms of planning and having agents. Like we said, your chat GPT is becoming kind of like your assistant, is to be, that's helping you answer some of the questions, giving you uh, some of the instructions, some of the ideas. But if you think about how you can use AI in terms of the planning side, uh, visually planning, uh,
Yeah, I
not
just think
just on puzzles and working through this, some of the problems, giving you ideas, giving hints on how you can solve some different problems. I think that's a good use case. If you think about the medical field and being able to be empowered in real time by other things outside from what you're looking at. You got
yeah.
to remember, like a surgeon thinking about all the possible things that can happen.
Yes.
Maybe AI can help on some of those,
Well,
right?
I think
Some of
that's
the
the
things.
cool part. Yeah, you're right, and I think that's definitely the piece that I was kind of noodling on or thinking about was, you have these AR glasses, you have whatever it is, even with the Meta today, the pass-through camera is going to be a challenge, but I think
Mhm.
even with rudimentary LLMs or generative AI capabilities, I think um, I might be able to get over that hurdle. I'm thinking myself practically because I like to do these little experiments. So, but
Right.
and if I connected that to those capabilities, and it's like, okay, yeah, I'm going to take this virtual object. Let's just say it's an apple,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
And say, hey, I don't even have to place the object in the room. Like I can detect a table, right? Because I know where the planes are, and I could even classify that because a classifier AI has already done that. That's
Right. Right.
old school tech in my mind, but obviously still magical, right?
Right.
But
Right.
then I could say, okay, yeah, now that I'm looking at the room, now that I've identified it's a table, right? With AI, I could push that to the next level and say, hey, based upon what you're seeing in this frame of video, I've given you the parameter that you're looking at a table. Now identify what objects are on there and then create that object as a duplicate using this code structure and then place it on the table next to that. That's totally doable today because we could merge those technologies together in that way.
Mhm.
So I could say, I don't know what's on that table, right?
Right.
Traditional spatial mapping systems are going to only take you as far as, it's a table or I believe it's a table, right?
Mhm.
But AI could take it further and go, oh, look at that. They've stuck books on it. It has 4 pedestals on top of it. I confirm that it is truly a table. Then beyond that, it's like, okay, now what objects are on that table? Well, looking at this and based upon the spatial mapping system and what I have in my classification system, there's an
Mhm.
apple, there's a book, etc. Right? Great. Now put a fake book that's on the table that ties into the, I don't know, Sherlock Holmes game that I'm in right
Right.
now, right? That
Right.
is the
Right.
new clue in the puzzle. I love that because from a storyteller perspective, I don't know if you remember, I wrote an article about this a long time ago where, oh boy, I think it's been 5 years now. It's been a long time.
Wow, a long time, right?
It's a long time ago in my mind, where you walk into a room and because you have AI and spatial capability, the story can rewrite itself on the fly based upon
Mhm.
the input models that are happening. So, like,
Right.
a book falls off the shelf and the AI and the spatial maps all work together and they go, oh, the story narrative has changed now. And,
Right. Right.
it wasn't Colonel Mustard in the
Yeah.
in the conservatory. It's Colonel Mustard now in the library and whatever.
Yeah.
I love that, and I can almost taste it. Like we're there. We're almost there.
We're
You know,
almost there.
fast food cameras are going to be a biggest challenge, I think, right now because fast food's great, but there's still not high enough resolution with some of the latency to do that. But we can make approximations. Seems like I think I have a project for you to start building out, Ron.
I mean, think about any board game that you have out there.
Yeah.
Can you change the storytelling experience on that board game with this new technologies that we have? And that how can AI help with that?
Yeah.
You know, we've moved a lot of the board games actually into you know, online, right? A lot of it, so you can do that in a different format. But the real fun about you know, this board games is really the storytelling. It's always different scenarios, different, especially the interaction side, and a lot of these different things that's happening right now. This technology helps us to get to that next level of the storytelling side. And as humans, we love stories. We live with different stories. We understand different stories. Even movies these days have becoming a different way of getting this storytelling. I know we're kind of, a lot of the movies were stuck in like one screen, just what everyone experiences. It's always cumbersome, you know, one of those movies where you have to select, you know, left or right and have one of those open-ended storylines where it can split. But the spatial mapping in the room and being able to hide some stuff in the room or be able to experience it in a different experiences in a different way, lives a different story, gives us a different story in terms of the not just the gaming side but also the different way of entertaining.
Well, I think we talked a little bit about the gaming side, but let's bring it down to some practicality. You used the medical example, right? And I think about somewhere where you could use these devices, an AR pass-through device, and bind augmented and spatial understanding plus model understanding plus AI together in a way where, you know, heaven forbid you have to perform an appendectomy, right? Well, certainly we could provide a video that shows, you know, what happens as a holographic representation. You know, we could even provide instructions from the American Medical Association on how to do this, right? But where the problem typically occurs is when something in the environment changes from what is in the textbook. And I think that's where the AI piece really comes into play. It's like, oh, okay, no, this particular patient, you don't make the incision here. And then the AI recalculates it. And instead of the overlay showing where the incision goes, you now see the incision at a different point because of exterior information that's been provided to that. So I wanted to kind of say that because it's like, you know, we talk a little bit about the story and we talk about the game, but I think I've found personally it sometimes takes a lot of painting the picture for others that are not in the industry or not part of it to be able to get them to make that leap beyond the fantastical into the practical. And so, you know, I wanted to kind of pick that one out for a moment because you mentioned that about the medical. I was like, well, let's tie it to something that could really be a practical scenario. It could be something that could, who knows, save lives because of the way that the technology has been used in a unique way. Let's change topic for a second. I want to jump to another topic that I mentioned. So there is a lot of rumor going on that Google is going to enter the fray again with a new headset. What are your thoughts on that? What have you heard, if anything? And what do you think the specs might potentially be?
Well, I haven't been following Google and in terms of the new stuff that they've been working on.
Well,
But
if you just take a look at the industry, they kind of have to. Like, I mean, you know, because you've got Apple over here, you've got Meta over here. Microsoft's laying quiet for a little bit. You know, obviously they've had a major change. which impacted some of our buddies.
Mhm.
And when you look at these other, when you look at Google, it's kind of like something has to happen. I mean,
Right.
there's going to be a response. What do you think that device might have in it? Do you think a custom chipset? What do you think might be their approach this time around?
Well, everyone's going to custom chipset lately, right?
Yeah, they want to build it themselves.
Because be able to experience it's the same way as when any technology, anything new, you wanted to make sure that there's room for like how innovation. And innovation typically happens. That's when you start building all these different tools or different chipset, different things, and how you would want to be able to have the advantage over your competitor. So it's not just becoming not on the software side, but also have to be close to the hardware because of all these AI things that's happening. That is having kind of like a chipset dedicated for AI, a chipset dedicated for things. It's not we're moving, moving out of a general purpose processor, but having special purpose one. So we're having vision chipset. We're having maybe eventually we'll have a hand tracking chipset specifically for that, or a wall chipset, like it's like you integrate it to the wall because now the TVs are part of the wall, that kind of thing. It's becoming more and becoming more and more part of the environment, rather than just just a device that you hold in your hand. But it's becoming part of this seamless, and and you've seen that. I mean, refrigerators have their own chipset but nowadays. They have the TV and all that stuff.
Some stuff seems a little bit ridiculous even to me, but like and I'm a big technology geek, obviously. So, but when you think about like Google's made several forays into this space, right? Why? I mean, it's going to make sense for them to reintroduce something. Do you think it's going they would try to go after a business market? Because even though Google Glass was not well received, let's just say that, by the initial launch, there were many things in the capabilities that were ahead of its time and some that were behind. And besides, Google Glass is actually still used in some logistic industries today. It never disappeared, right? So there was a lot of business knowledge that the team could learn about use cases and practicality and such. Do you think that they're going to go after? Because my original hypothesis, my original thought with Apple Vision Pro, because of the price point, it's pretty high, and Apple tends to price their products high, is it probably would have made more sense for Apple to go directly after business and enterprise customers initially, based upon what we've seen happen across the industry. Do you think, or hypothesize, or just think in general that Google might try to do that, or go after business customers first? Go after consumers or business customers?
I mean, what is the expertise of Google anyway, right? If you think about where Google is, they want to organize data. Anything data, they want to organize. And spatial is data.
Yeah.
Right? Everything that you see, it's a way to collect data. It's a way to add data, right? So that they can organize it. Hey, Matt. Yeah. So it is a way for Google to be able to collect more data. So that's why it makes sense. That's the reason why Google Photos there. Android is a data. It's a way for us to collect, but a lot of the headsets are all based on some, sometimes Android or something related to on top of Android, right? So I think they have that capability to be able to.
They certainly
get
have
to that in order to collect more data, to organize data.
To put out that. Let's bring Matt into the conversation for joining us. So one of the things I was talking about, if you weren't catching it, is I do hypothesize 2024, maybe end of year, I think Google's probably going to make its entry back into the AR VR market with a new headset device. After the last one, which was Daydream, I believe. Am I correct?
I think that's definitely possible. Yeah.
What do you think it might be, Matt?
into, I don't mean to into Google specifically, but I do think that I mean it's a challenging market to get in just because Meta has spent so much money investing in that space. But there's a reason why they're investing that. So they see that, just like Ron was talking about, as a way to not only get access to data, but also there's this concept around controlling the endpoint, right? Like controlling the next piece of technology that people use to interface. And if headsets could be that, you know, and it's plausible. I mean, if you think about if headsets were comfortable to wear, and they, you know, if you were able to use a Meta Quest 3 headset for all day, for example, for $500, I mean, that's a lot more affordable than a whole set of monitors and PCs.
I think we're on price point. We finally hit a price point that I think most people can stomach, and the price point aligns pretty well with the features, I would say, as well too. Which, you know, early on when you look at like the Oculus Rift, the DK1, and even before that, right? People could not stomach, like, I have to buy an Xbox controller with this as well. Like, you know, the whole bundled purchase model, or and if you look at other technology, it's always been that bundled purchase model, right? Even when PS5 was on such low supply, right? They're like, you want a PS5? Great, it's $1,050,000 for you to buy one, or whatever, you know. They finally have their demand up now. But I think that's actually a good point. So one thing that I don't think we've seen kind of happen in this marketplace, I talked a little bit about kind of, I think haptics has not gone as far as it needs to go yet. And I'm not talking haptic bodysuits and things like that, but just micro haptics and such. But I'm wondering what you all think about, like, if we all talk about what is the killer software, what is the killer hardware component. What do you think might be a killer accessory that helps to evolve the AR and VR industry in a unique way? We may have had something that has to come back around in a different form, but what do you think? Because I don't think the ultimate controller is just hands. I don't believe that. I think there's other tool sets that we could still evolve potentially.
Yeah. I mean, this is kind of a radical idea, but I almost think that's some sort of like wearable battery, like that's comfortable to wear, or power pack or processor or something, rather than having that mounted on your head, right? Because if you have a lot of weight on your head and it's not distributed in a good way, it's actually quite uncomfortable after a certain amount of time. But if you could have either the power or the computational piece of the solution somewhere else that's wearable in a comfortable way, I mean, that would be really interesting.
This as well. Magic Leap did this, and before that, we had another device. I can't remember the name of it. Help me out here. Leap, couple of the Vision Ultra Leap earlier devices had that, where you would have the secondary thing, which makes sense because then you could keep a device evolving with its GPU and stuff without having to upgrade the whole thing. I agree with you on the battery piece, because I don't know how much time you spent in the latest MetaQuest device. If you have one, if you had the chance to play with one.
I've tried it, but I haven't, I'm sure not as extensively as you have.
I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. But what's funny is using it for extended periods of time, I have noticed that it tends to pinch a lot more, and it's because of the weight distribution. I don't know, something's off about it a tiny bit. They certainly opened it up for glasses. That's a great change that they made, because when I'm working with the old one, it's funny because my glasses just kind of get stuck to it and like come off every single time, which if you're trying to jump back and forth between devices, that's so annoying. But yeah, I think definitely on the battery front, but I think about having a wearable battery pack. That would be more than just even powering your AR VR device. I think that needs to power something else too. It needs to power, like, you know, all your phone devices and stuff, and not just like that. And you just plug it in at the end of the day, and you're like, oh, that's my UVB, universal versatile battery. Copyright. I like to go with marketing things in copyright.
Well, for me, I think it's going to be a pendant. something that you wear on your neck, and it's a pendant.
Oh,
I think it's an accessory that would be something that AR we can use, or some other thing outside where we don't have to get something on our head. We already have some earphones. I think the next step is let's have some pendants
so
somewhere.
you want to work more on holographic representation.
Right.
I
Or
mean,
the battery itself is in it,
well,
right?
that does touch a little bit on some of the things I talked about around dynamic LiDAR capabilities. Because if we have a dynamic LiDAR system that is doing something that at the top of a, much like you would think of a fire, smoke alarm on the top of a ceiling,
Yeah.
having this and then doing a projection map structure down and then detecting it, like a LiDAR scan and an interval beacon, I think we wouldn't be that far away from having a portable projection unit that then could interact with that at a cost-effective level. That would be kind of interesting too. I mean, I think right now we're all bound. Most people are bound to thinking about the headset as the vehicle for transportation into the augmented space. I think that hit on the nail on the head there, is thinking about what other types of accessories could truly enable augmented experiences above and beyond just something glued to our face, even if it is lightweight glasses.
Yeah, I saw one where it projects to your palm using something, a pin or a pen that projects it to your, some of that information that you don't really need to wear glasses. I mean, they always ask the questions like, why does everyone have to wear glasses, or something that blocks them from doing what they if they can have that information anywhere. We already have our phones giving us, but it glues us. If it's something that we can just easily say, hey, I need that information, I need it in my palm of my hand, show it to me, something like that.
That may very well be the next transitional state beyond this. If we look to 2020, I don't know, 2045, right?
2045.
Jump out a little bit further in time, right? Is okay. I just bought the Holo Project Module 342A with advanced IK capability,
Right.
Which also, one of its new features is it now detects when there's other people have entered the room, and it pulls their personal preferences. I actually think that's interesting because it does start to blend. I always love things that look at both user experience, but also kind of the technological experience, and then blending in architectural experience, how that could actually happen. It's odd. I don't think I've seen too many companies produce something like that. I mean, we know there's holographic projections. Obviously, we've seen that. And there are interactive ones. It'd be interesting to see if that type of thing takes off, but blended with LiDAR and all the other capabilities, right? Then I could actually have my AI assistant for real.
I mean, there's quite a bit you can do with just software and a camera feed using SLAM or other techniques. But yeah, I mean, certainly if you need a level of precision, probably LiDAR is a good way to do that.
That'd be fun. Someone should get on that and build that for me. And I can build it in the house. I mean, one of the things that's challenging, I don't know how high you've tried to map with the spatial map in the Meta device. Even though I don't know if you've gone through the room mapping experience, it's gotten a lot better. It's funny. I'm sitting there and I'm geeking out about it because I'm like, oh, look at that! They're using a beautiful triplanar shader to be able to do their mapping structure, and I'm sitting there going, oh man, I remember when I was learning about triplanar shaders and how to build them. And I was thinking all the technical stuff as I'm like looking around the room, and then I'm like, I wonder if you can get, because my room has kind of an arch a little bit higher from the base, so it's probably about 7 feet to the top of the roof and an arc. And I was like, how am I ever going to map that piece? Because the distance is not quite there, right? But thankfully, they did it. As long as you get the outer parameter pretty good, it'll fill in the distance. That's AI. Technically, work there and going, this is a connected plane with a connected plane. Let's merge that together and hope that's the right thing in the middle. I don't know. Have you played with the mapping experiences, or have you played with any of the new experiences that are AR enabled? Anything that stands out to you?
I've not. Yeah, I've not. But I have noticed that it is in the context of the Quest 3, it's like vastly improved though. Like the pass-through AR is like much better than it was. It's very
And the
responsive,
mapping's
flat and
faster
clear.
too.
Yeah. And that was actually a drawback in some other pass-through headsets is the lag. And so that them addressing the lag and also the clarity issue, I mean, that really opens up a lot of possibilities. And I almost think that probably pass-through AR may be the future compared to something like a waveguide display or something that's much more expensive, right? Because it's on a cost factor. Yeah, the Meta 3 type pass-through is much more affordable to end users than something that's a waveguide type display.
I wonder how much consumers are going to tolerate kind of because we're going to get into more of the visual GPU per eye, display per eye race. And if you look at a device like Pimax, for example, and Pimax has their crystal device, of course, Varho has their, you probably saw Varho cut their price point, right? Varho's devices typically were around $8,500. They cut their price in half.
Wow.
Don't quote me on that price, but I know they were really expensive. They were top tier of the line because of their ability to basically, when you're looking at a zone, your focal point plus your eye track plus where your gaze is would become high resolution, high def, and have a higher pixel density. Everything else around it, the way that it does that is it basically blurs things that are not in the focal point. It's kind of what's the word? It's multifocal, I can't remember the term. But that's one way that you conserve GPU power is because you don't have to process everything that's around the outside edge. You're only processing which the eye tracking should enable. We didn't get, I don't believe eye tracking was added to the Quest 3. I don't believe that's in there, if I remember correctly. It made it in the Pro. It's not in the other one. It was a cost.
I think it's only, I think you're right. I think it's only in the Pro.
Yeah. And so I think, certainly, I don't know how expensive those modules are to produce, but I mentioned before that like with the latest Quest, I think we're definitely getting to a point where the XR2 chipset's probably at its end point. So I'm wondering how many cameras are too many cameras on these devices. I think 25 cameras.
Right. It looks
a portable drone camera that pops out and goes, hold on one second.
Yeah.
It scans everywhere.
Yeah. Because I would be inclined to pay a little bit more if the camera fidelity went up more for the pass-through, because I still get nausea personally if I'm in there. I was doing some design work there was a lot of design tools that used to be out in the ecosystem for designing in augmented and virtual reality. And we've had a lot of transition. So the only one out there right now that's really getting a lot of buzz is Shapes. Shout out to that team because they do a lot of good work. Although they need to fix some UX in the controllers. And so that one I've been using, and when I'm trying to design, like I was working on something recently because I was doing the talk on finance, and I was like, it'd be really cool if I could build like a Scrooge McDuck money bin in my downstairs room, and then I could have kids like swim through the money, and then they could count the money as they go, but it's all in AR. So I was like trying to mock that all up. I have video recordings of me like mocking it. I was like, man, I made myself nauseous, and I'm in AR, but it's because the pass-through is not as good as like the HoloLens 2 device,
Yeah. What do you think about kind of like lower price point, more specialized headsets and glasses that are maybe not cutting edge in terms of the technology, but maybe are more of a price point that consumers are willing to pay for? And so specifically, I was thinking about I shared a link with you recently, Preston, called it's
Yeah.
Ingo 2
Yeah.
eyewear, and it's like their glasses. It's just really a heads-up display in one eye, and I think it displays like numeric characters or alphanumeric characters. It's not even like not even showing a 3D environment. But it's got a very specific price point, which is that like if you're an athlete, if you're like a cyclist or a runner or something like that, it's designed for you to wear in an active environment. And I think that's something that's really kind of unique and interesting in that, you can't really go running with a Quest 3 headset. You can't go running with glasses or something like that.
I'm torn because the biggest challenge is, I'm thinking from a development standpoint and also from a sales and marketing standpoint, is sure, it's great that it can address a particular market segment. The problem often arises when it's so specialized that you need a super specialized skill set to build for that technology. And the other thing is, I find it often tends to bifurcate the ecosystem in different ways. So it kind of like, if you think about the mobile phones right now, right? Most mobile phones that are coming out right today are not re-engineering the wheel every time, right? It's a GPU push, a CPU push, a memory push. That's about it, maybe a display push. But it's not reinventing the re-architecture of it, which is why I was telling earlier, like spatial maps having a commonality is important because it gets that to a standardization. And from a business perspective, they want to be able to scale, right? They want to be able to go, oh, can I roll this out in 2025 and still expect it to be usable in 2026? Or, more importantly, 2023 and roll it out in 2024 and still have it. So my concern is really around how specific do you have to be to develop to that? Can you use existing SDKs and can you build upon that? That's that. So
yeah, I agree with that, because I've noticed that technologies always evolve that way, where you have a generalized tool, right? Generalized something. Like, for example, when you started working with, with phones, right? We specifically say, okay, we're going to do phones, but eventually, although all the other ones, it's not just phones anymore that's running Android. If you look at the software stack of it, where you like either Android or Mac or iOS, where it says Android, it did split up into special use cases, right?
Yeah.
Eventually, the Android got into where other things other than phones, right? Even a lot of the things that you use every day, are becoming like mobile, but it's not mobile, right? It's a mobile unit, pretty much a mobile unit. A lot of scanners, a lot of different things that you can buy. They're Android based. They're not programming language. The way you would program is about the same. They have a base, but you're not building a phone anymore. But it's a special case for a specific engine. The same way as happened on Windows a long time ago, right? You have special case GPU, and then it started to control like even nuclear reactors and all these different things, and having Windows running it. And all
now updating.
Mhm.
Now updating your nuclear safety protocols.
Right.
But
So
Ron, I think I agree with you. I don't know if Android's the best example personally, because Android has always had so many variants. And I think what at least from an AR and VR perspective, to kind of tie it back home, Apple's been pretty good about keeping retrofitting to particular device segments easy enough to do in their SDK. So as opposed, sure, they sometimes make some changes to things that I'm like, why did they change that code structure now to do that for, UI update, etc. But regardless, I think they've done a pretty good job of like maintaining that backward compatibility and consistency, and also the forward consistency as well, which has always been a bigger challenge even with web technologies. Is until because still we're fighting with a lot of those problems where it's like, this phone doesn't like that, or that phone doesn't like this. I'm dealing with it today, working on an AR solution I'm trying to come up with an idea for. And I'm like, it'll probably work on Android. I guess it's going to work on iOS. I mean, I can try a number of phones and hope. But what do you think? This is going to be a lead into kind of, I think, your talk coming up here in a little bit, right? Is what do you think is some of the potential significant changes to web XR technology that might enable better AR adoption for customers or better VR adoption for customers? That's for both of you.
I've noticed, right? Well, I know YouTube is very, very famous. It's becoming everywhere because of web technologies, right?
Yeah.
It was compatible in all the different areas, and even TVs will have their own browser or have a flavor of browser because in order to be able to show YouTube. And that's why YouTube is everywhere, because of all the different technologies that the web gives you. In the same way as how the web's giving you that the road into be able to share information, share the apps easily. And that's one of the things that it makes it easier to, as an ecosystem, easier to get to, at the same time allows that you're not thinking about the hardware, you're thinking about the case where you wanted to showcase, right? You're not thinking about that's another abstraction layer on top of all the different hardwares that you have. And my kids love YouTube VR, and sounds like they have the biggest screen in the world, and they
that's
have
this native web technology, right?
Right, they use a lot of
so it's just using, like, I don't know, I can't remember the codec that specifically works with WebXR at the moment. I haven't done anything in the last few days. Actually, I have done something with codecs lately, but nothing like that one. But like, what do you think as far as like, are there any things that you see in the WebXR standards now that are better aligned? I talked briefly about, for example, there's still some challenges in Safari from a browser standpoint, but we're not really experiencing those in the Chrome side of things.
Right.
And I think it's because Apple's a little bit gatekeepy.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the case. I think companies tend to try to make a walled garden, or at least, even if it's unintentional, like their priority is always going to be their own ecosystem. And so, unfortunately, I think that leads to WebXR often being a lower priority for these device manufacturers, because they would prefer for users to be within their own kind of walled garden and buying from their app store and so forth. So I think probably it won't really be a leading area until the devices become very homogenized, and in the way that like PCs are, right? There's lots of different manufacturers of Windows PCs. Really, you need an ecosystem or an environment where there's lots of manufacturers of headsets that are all kind of generic. Maybe they have their own standard OS. That's the kind of environment where you would have more of an adoption of like web-based VR. And
we need a CD-ROM environment, then, is what you're saying. If you think about back in the day, right, when we first had CD-ROMs, and for all the young listeners out there, right, and we were like going to store our data on a CD-ROM, and it's like, it's going to last. The CD is going to last for 20 years, I think, was their shelf life, if I remember correctly. By the way, it's very rare that they lasted 20 years. I just pulled some the other day, and I had a lot of data corruption, and they were old, some of the older CDRs. But yeah, I think that's right, because, and that gets to some of the standardization across that, because even when I look at CD-ROMs or older technology like that, when everybody could make a CD, the price point dropped drastically. Of course, quality was still a concern, but even then, everybody then was like, oh, I can actually afford a CD writer. I can write my own data, 700 megabytes of data on a disk. That's unheard of, right? Which is funny because we're still, now we're talking in gigabytes when we look at some of the storage on these devices here. What do you think? What do you think overall as far as like what is going to be the next? What do you think is going to be the next biggest advancement in the hardware capability? Something that maybe people aren't thinking about yet. This is a very open-ended question. It's like I can have my AI over here writing questions for you all.
I'm a little bearish in the sense that I think right now the AR VR market is going through the if you're familiar with like the Gartner hype cycle, it's kind of in the trough of this.
Definitely. I talk about it all the time. Yeah.
It was very hyped up, very active for several years with lots of investment several years ago, and right now I feel like it's kind of bottoming out a bit, but I think it will start coming back up where it's more tied to like specific use cases and like actual. I think people are more likely to buy it when there's a clear value proposition to it. And unfortunately, I think that will lead to an environment where there's not a lot of innovation probably for the next year as companies invest in other areas.
That makes it sad for me. Obviously, as you know, in the director of innovation, and I look to connect technologies in interesting ways, and that's not just AR, VR, that's web technologies and database technologies and all kinds of things like that. What do you think? Let's just say that innovation, and I do believe that innovation is still happening. It always happens in pockets.
Right.
It's not as prevalent right now because, everybody's turned on the greatest sliced bread right now, which everyone is talking about generative AIs and, all of that. And AI is not old. It's not new. It's been around for a while now. So, but that being said, if you did have to put something on there, what do you think could be that next evolution or innovation component that people might want to focus on with inside of AR and VR? It's a tough question. I have tough questions.
Yeah, it is. It is a tough question.
These are the things I spend my nights thinking about, obviously. Because, I mean, you're right. You have to figure out, you should not have to force a value proposition. What I mean by that is not everybody is going to jump up and go, oh, I need that right this moment, and be able to relate it to something that is important for them, right? I mean, it's the whole component of UX strategy is understanding where does it hurt? How do you align the technologies to support that hurt? And can it be used to discover or solve new problems along the way? And that's just technology in general.
Right. Yeah, I will tell you that, like, I mean, I don't know that this is necessarily the next generation of where it will go, or even that it's what consumers in general want, or businesses in general want. But what I think is interesting, like what I would personally like, is more capabilities in headsets that look like normal glasses. Because I think I think part of why one thing holding VR back is that like the early adopters have adopted it. But the general population is still do it because a lot of people don't like wearing things on their face. But if it's the form factor of glasses, the way that X-Real is trying to get to, or certain other products, I think that could be successful, especially if like they were able to miniaturize like the Meta 3 Quest 3 type capabilities into X-Real's form factor. That would be pretty amazing, actually. So
I'm curious to see how well the new glasses sell, even though they don't have a lot of what you would consider, like, you can't call AR glasses AR without having AR. Sorry, you can't. Mm-hmm. But if you had, that's kind of like when Bose produced their AR audio, they had things, and they're like, it's AR. It's like, no, it's
it's a headset. Yeah.
Yeah, I get it, but there's no eyes involved in this. But okay, playing on the moniker. But what do you think? Like, so I'm curious to see if those glasses will hit that niche market, because they really are, I think, a niche market. The Ray-Bans that are coming out. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking of a use case, so I'm gonna nerd out here for a moment, right? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, Yeah, for me, you know how we have a mouse, a keyboard, we have we have all these different peripherals on a computer or compute. I
Drumstick.
believe, yeah, drumstick and all that. I believe glasses and all this AR stuff, it is a peripheral to something.
Yeah.
And I think that's how we should treat it as such, as an extension of, let's say, your glasses is an extension of what, to make your eyes better, right? Extension of your body. So a lot of these tools make an extension of a compute system. And I think that's how we can have it to where we can start using it kind of like a monitor these days. You plug it in the back. You don't even think about, what am I buying? Well, you think about all the display unit, but you plug it in on the computer, you're pretty much connected.
Want it to work.
Right.
Yeah.
You just want it to work, wanted to do that. And I think that's more and more what I want to see in the AR VR space is where, maybe we just have one computer. We can just use our phone and just, have glasses and things work. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like, I need to change OS because of that. I need to change things because of that. We just wanted to, like, I buy this thing, I connect it to my phone. Everything I need is already there. And if you need to add new things, it gets added to new things.
I definitely think that Meta was on the right track with that, because it is kind of like I leave it, forget it, and then when I need it, it's there, providing I charged it. But that's true with all
right.
But I think with those glasses, like, I was trying to think of a use case, and I was like, why would I ever need that? And I was trying to put myself in that moment, right? Like, why would I need a video stream? I have a TikTok channel and stuff like that, and I was like, oh yeah, you know what? I watch all these people that do like metal detecting, and they're having to hold a phone and do this stuff. It's like, those glasses would be perfect for that, because I don't need to have that. And I was like, oh yeah, I would buy something like that if that was one of my daily jobs, or I was doing that, or so I'm really curious to see what other markets it'll tap into. But enabling some of the AR information plus AI capabilities in a tool like that would be really, really exciting. It's not enough to push me over the edge. Like, I got to tell you, like, the price point for Apple Vision, it's out of the reach of a lot of people in a downturn economy, including developers. In fact, it's interesting because they're kind of slow rolling it so much. Like, I keep writing them and going, hey, you have these labs for people in Shanghai. You have a lab for a person in Cupertino. What about the rest of the country?
Yeah, we need one in Dallas.
Places between this area and this area. Like, what's the deal?
Yeah.
And I'm like, it kind of speaks to some of the exclusivity approaches that Apple's always tried to do with its product launch lines and stuff. But I think this is an interesting thing, because I don't think that they've fully personally proven out their use case structure yet. Even in their videos that they've shown people, they look cool. Like, I don't know how I feel about digital eye replication outside the screen, because those are not your real eyes. Those are AI eyes.
The value is what, when you're interacting with people in the real world while wearing it, they can see your eyes, your facial expressions. I mean,
I'd like to see the user research study on that, because I think we may have crossed some uncanny valleys there.
Yeah.
Unknowingly. But, and Apple does a pretty good job doing, user research studies and stuff. But I'm not convinced you need to. I think you will have to have some type of pass through, some type of new glass that's discovered, that can use dim, auto dim, change the opacity structure. But putting someone's fake eyes on there as an interim step, I don't know about that.
Yeah. The way I see it is that it's a stepping stone to another technology. It's more getting these devices to be able to perfect the spatial side of things, right?
Yeah.
If we use this at a certain point of view, the same way as when they first came out with phones and how big they are and how cumbersome they are, that it's not really a mobile phone that could only last for like 30 minutes or so. These are the learnings that you get to a technology where it becomes stable, right?
I can't help but think about this video that's been in my head for days. There's this TikToker out there, and she pretends to be the printer, and we still have this issue today. Can't find the printer. I don't know.
Right.
You just printed for me 10 minutes ago, right? And it's like, no, I didn't. Wait a minute, can't find the printer. Like, we still don't have those problems solved, but we can send people to the moon on a rocket ship. I always laugh at that because it's like, I tried to print 2 days ago, and my printer was like, I'm not on the network. I don't exist. You clearly do. You're right there. Like, it's interesting because I don't like in this technology that should be perfected, right? We should have perfected that. We still don't have these things perfected. I don't know. Just some funny insight into the technology space we're into, because it's like, oh yeah, we're talking about, these crazy things where we're understanding the world around us, but in order to do that, first we have to, get past the Wi-Fi issues and all of the other challenges that are in the way. I think most of that's been mitigated, hopefully, in how these devices connect. But I don't know. It makes me laugh when every time I run into a technical issue that is like so base. You're like, really? Yeah.
I think more and more, a lot of these things have opportunity, I think, for AR to be able to solve, like connectivity. Hey, I'm looking at it. The printer is there. Go find it for me. That kind of thing, right?
It's right there. Actually, that's a good call out, because if you notice, and mind you, the pass-through made it a little bit hard, but when you're connecting the new Meta device, it actually uses the pass-through camera with a QR code. So it's strong enough to be able to pick up a QR code with the camera, which I actually thought has some interesting potentials with some things that I'm working on, because QR code is a great way to jump in experience, and people are more familiar with it now. It's not a weird thing.
Yeah, AR is more about having context. The machines learning about its environment and having context. And if it knows its context, it can know how to help you. Yeah. And I think that's more and more, even though, is it really just the camera that can provide that context? And that's another question. But if with all these AR tools that we have right now, it's all about the reason why we got better storytelling, better ways on how to interact with our environments, because it knows the context, and because of that context, it allows us to get into a different, the next level of computing.
So let's bring in one final topic then, I think, and we'll almost be at a wrap here. Here's an idea.
Yes.
So one of the big things, of course, that Meta's pushing, and certainly the Apple's pushing as well, is gaming, and we're all aware of that, hopefully. What do you think the AAA titles can bring to the VR space that potentially indie games may not be bringing to the space right now? If you're a gamer. I'm a gamer, obviously, so.
Reliving live sports. How can you have live sports at the same time, make it a part of the game?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
Yeah.
You want to do that touchdown? Great. I hope you don't break a femur.
But what I'm saying is that, there's always that reliving that moment of being in that game, right? But at the same time, can you create storylines around that game, around that live event?
Yeah. So taking that IP and potentially translate it different ways. It would be really interesting. Like, I know Assassin's Creed, of course, is coming out, and everybody's stoked about that on Meta. I believe it's on Meta, if I'm correct. And what if instead of a third person view, you are that character, right? But take that on to the next level, where it's like you take off the headset and you move to a different digital experience. You're like still that character, right? That is the extension of the metaverse that Meta changed their company name to. The whole approach, to be able to connect in that way. Like, hopefully, you don't become an actual assassin, but
Yeah.
Maybe virtually killing objects along the way.
Right.
I just think it's interesting because I don't think we've hit that full extension of those digital ecosystems across the board. I think that AAA games like that, well, they certainly have the budgets to do that, because the biggest thing is most people, I mean, I don't know what the total, we just had Ghostbusters come out a little bit ago, and it's not getting good praise on Meta at all. I had high hopes for it, but it's like, it's too cartoonish. It doesn't do this. It's not And I'm hoping that some of these other AAA games are really going to step up their approach. I don't know. Have you played any good games lately?
Not necessarily AR VR ones, although I think that I think we'll see VR ports of popular ones. Like if you look at the two big PC game hits that are not VR but are 2D, really, or PC based, are like Starfield and what's the other one? Is it like Elder Scrolls or?
Yeah. Well, the new dungeon one just came out the other day, and I hear it's getting really good marks from people because it's a social dungeon explorer in VR. So you can play as multiple characters going through the dungeon in your different roles.
But like, so in Starfield almost feels like they intended to make it a VR version of it, because there's all these extra little things that you can pick up that have no purpose in the game, but it would make a total sense for VR if you were to just like pick up things and throw them around your spaceship or whatever. So
yeah, Starfield is, as you know, my ship is still my junkyard in Starfield. I basically just dumped everything in the ship because I gave up on inventory because I never have enough, or my guy always has space COVID. Like seriously, my person's like coughing their lung up all the time because I walked across the vent or something. And I was like, "Are you serious? Like, I don't have any more antibiotics. I'm in the far reaches of the galaxy here. Suck it up. Run to the ship. Crawl to the ship. Whatever you need to do." But yes, those types of things would be really fun. I think No Man's Sky, when they did their transition to bringing VR in, that was one of my most memorable VR PC experiences, because hopping into the ship that I built and then pulling the hatch down and then like, oh no, there's pirates in the distance, I have to go fight them off now, and I'm trying to navigate in my ship and not get nauseous at the same time because it's space travel. It was a lot of fun. So I look forward to that. My daughter and I are she's on the VR wagon pretty good now. So she integrates some of my headsets, so we'll be in the living room.
Right.
We've mapped off opposite sides of the living room to different spaces. So meaning she has this side and I have this side.
Right,
and so we don't punch each other, because she'll be playing Beat Saber on that side, I'll be playing Beat Saber on this side, or Synth Riders or other things. So I think the younger generation is definitely getting it, and it's much more norm than I would say. Even people of our age groups, versus some of those. What do you think as far as like ages? Are you seeing younger ages trying to embrace the AR and VR technology more, or do you think that they're just kind of like, this is just technology?
I think in the world of Roblox, it becomes this is the norm, right? And it's become, all the games are social, has social,
and that's on
Meta
now, right? Is that open up on
Meta? I don't. I think
it's coming soon. If it hasn't,
it's coming soon or something. I don't know. I think we're coming up in the hour. I know I need to prepare for my my presentation coming up at 4 o'clock. So I'm going to switch to another channel. And is there anything else that we need to?
Thank you all for coming or listening to this on the stream later on, and thanks to Matt for showing up and having a conversation with us. And we're trying to get the Dallas AR VR group rolling and all kinds of conversations and stuff. So thank you all. And Ron, have a great presentation.
Thank you.
And I'm out for the year.
All right. All right. I'll see you again next year.
Bye.
Bye.